Hi, everyone. We want to invite you again to a new live online course with Svagito. And due to the current affairs in the world, we want to make it about victim and perpetrators. Can you say something more about that, Svagito, please?
Well, victim and perpetrators are basically very bonded to each other. That means they belong really together. It's like the two sides of one whole. So without a perpetrator, there is no victim. And without the victim, there is no perpetrator. So they are really like belonging together. The problem is that we often identify mostly with a victim. And victims usually have a lot of repressed anger. So underneath the victim, there's a lot of anger. And in the perpetrator, what we often don't see is that underneath their violence, sometimes there is the feeling of being victimized. So this is quite an interesting phenomenon, I feel. And also this identification with one side of people who have a conflict gives us a sense of belonging. It comes of our need to belong. And this is this kind of bonding that we feel often comes from our personal past or from the past of our family. It comes because we belong to a collectivity. And in this way, we keep on repeating past conflicts in our own life. So this is a very, widespread dynamic. And it is really how conflicts keep on repeating themselves over centuries.
Yeah, and over generations, we often see that when you work with constellation work, how it comes back and forth and again and again.
And it often shows when we say we. When we use the word we, it means we identify ourselves with a collectivity, and it automatically means exclusion. Because when we say we automatically exclude others who don't belong to that same group. So the sense of belonging automatically excludes others. So the learning will be to learn to stand alone, not as belonging to a group, but to be more an outsider. To learn to stand alone and to learn to remove oneself from a collective energy. Then it doesn't matter where you belong, you're an individual. And it reminds me what Osho said, individual is the highest value. So it's about being an individual, and an individual is not a we. So to move out of the feeling of we is, for me, is very important, to also to not be part of a trauma field.
And that's a little bit like a therapist, right? And when we facilitate, it's also to stay out.
Yeah, to not take sides, on sympathize with one side, but to learn to include both sides in your heart. Unless you can do that, you can actually not really help a client. Because clients often identify themselves as being a victim, and they're angry with the perpetrator. And the learning will be to open yourself to the perpetrator. That's why from the perpetrator, more healing potential comes, because the eventual learning is to open yourself to the one who is a perpetrator. And in many situations, this is not so easy to do, Let's say one murdered somebody from your family, then to open up to the murderer is not an easy step to do. And and sometimes people cannot do that for generations. But to come together coming together means to look together at the people who suffered or died and cry for them. There is no separation.
Yeah. So what would you say now if people are watching the news and they're feeling very agitated and righteous and they want, like, this is terrible, we need to change something. what to do with all that?
Well, I don't know what to do with all that. I cannot say, but for me, it is always taking a personal look why I get agitated, or why I identify with this side or that side. What is my personal reason for doing that? So for me, it is not, there is no general statement. I don't like to make general statements about that, because everybody has his own personal reason why he identifies. So it is good to take a personal look, what makes me identify with this side or that side. And the righteousness behind it. The righteousness is strengthening our sense of belonging. It strengthens our bonding. By bonding, you feel I'm good and the others are bad. It gives you always a feeling that I'm the good one and the others are the bad ones. And this polarization between everybody wants to be the good person. But Osho used to say it's not about being a good person, it's about being a conscious person. And this is something totally different. But people want to be on the right side, to be the right ones or the good ones. And it has nothing to do with consciousness at all. Because being the good one is always related to morality and to values, what is good and what is bad. Consciousness is not related to values. And I'm surprised how many we as meditators are also caught up in moralistic attitudes. We have been meditators for a long time, and still we are so caught up in morality. And that shows it's a really long way to go to develop consciousness.
Yes, absolutely. And we can mention that also, that you will offer a free live online meditation also a bit connected to this topic. So we can...
Because we all have to learn that, to investigate, do I come from a moralistic viewpoint where I feel this is good and this is bad, these are good people and these are bad people. The moment we do that, we come from a moralistic attitude, and consciousness is something different. And we all do this all the time. So I think this is a very good step to watch when I'm doing this. So I'm also doing this often. So to stop a moment and to investigate that and become more conscious when you come from this. And basically wanting to be the good person and being on the side of the good is, our bonding, our childhood bonding, basically.
Mm. And the systemic view can help to sort of look beyond and to also to see like what's behind.
Well, in a constellation, often you see how the two sides which we separate, how they actually belong together, and how they actually want to come together. And if we judge, we don't allow this coming together really. Because very often, let's say if there was a murder, what I see in a constellation, the victim and the murder, they bond together. They want to come together in love, actually. Interesting. But the descendants of them, they don't allow this because they keep on being revengeful or judgmental. So they don't want to allow this. So the healing is actually not to put yourself, to involve yourself in the movement between victims and perpetrators, but to let that happen.
Mm.
And this is not easy because we are often feel so righteous in what we are thinking or doing, and this is a kind of arrogance that we often show in life, and not so easy to handle that.
Yeah, it can be a way to avoid the pain, right?
Yeah, and the helplessness.
Yes.
Because, something moved everybody in this way, and we don't want to feel that helplessness. So when you feel righteous or angry, you feel not helpless, you feel more powerful.
Yeah. So on a personal level also, I know sometimes you say that we all have victim and perpetrator inside. We have both sides, all of us. Can you say something more about that?
When you look inside, you sometimes have a murderous rage inside yourself. And when you look deep inside. And also you have this deep sense of helplessness where you feel you cannot do anything. When you look deeply, this is an existential reality. We are helpless as human beings. This is part of our existential reality. We are born in a certain situation, in a family, in a country, and things happen, and we die in a certain moment, and there's nothing we can do to control it. And the Western mind is so much involved in wanting to be in control of everything, and this is so out of tune with existential reality,
And maybe we're more used to expressing one side. So maybe I'm more used to being a victim, or maybe I'm more used to being a perpetrator, someone who...
When you feel a victim, you automatically feel you're good. Victims always feel they are good. And that is the problem. Perpetrators usually don't feel like that. Sometimes also, but often not, Of course, sometimes perpetrators also feel this, especially when they become perpetrators out of religious feelings. Then they also feel I'm doing the right thing. But other times, often perpetrators actually have a sense of guilt. But victims usually feel righteous.
Yeah, interesting. So we will look at this in different ways, and people can bring the questions to the course and explore with you.
Yeah, and it is good, I think, to look at it from a personal viewpoint, because there is no general answer to that. There is only a personal answer. What it is for me that limits my understanding, and for somebody else it may be something else. So there's always a certain history, personal, why we get involved in a certain dynamic, and that might be different for different people. So we're gonna look on personal questions, because I think it needs a personal exploration. So all these conflicts in the world, there is no generalized answer. Everybody needs to look very personal. What makes me get involved in this in some way? And not to bond yourself by saying, I'm on this side, or we, or things like this.
Yeah, so that's the way to peace, right? To come out of identification.
That's right. All problems relate to identification. Every problem is because of identification. So that is the whole learning in meditation, to move beyond being identified with your mind, with your body, with everything.
So on that note, we welcome you very much to the live online meditation with Svagito, which will be a webinar, and then to an online course where we meet on Zoom and we explore together with Svagito these topics of victim and perpetrator. Very welcome.
Thank you.